Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Homage Reflections on the AIDS Memorial Quilt. I am Angela Mirso, Director of the VCSU Art Gallery and Chair of the Art Department. It is with profound sincerity that I extend a warm welcome to each of you, whether present here tonight or joining us virtually. This event is a testament to the collaborative efforts of the VCSU Department of Art and Music, the VCSU Diversity and Inclusion Office, and the generous support of the Bridges Arts Council. In the spirit and respect and consideration for our speakers and performers, we kindly request that all cellular devices be silenced for the duration of our program. Additionally, we ask for no applause during the concert to maintain an atmosphere of uninterrupted contemplation and reflection as we engage with the touching narratives and artistry that define this evening program. Your cooperation is greatly appreciated. The AIDS epidemic, which emerged in June 1981, stands as one of the most devastating health crises of our time, claiming the lives of over 40 million individuals worldwide, and leaving countless others affected by the HIV virus. It was a period marked by fear, stigma, and uncertainty, as communities grappled with complexities of disease transmission and treatment. The echo of this fear resounded in our collective memory as we confronted the ongoing challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Like its predecessor, COVID-19 has tested our resolve and resilience, reminding us of the fragility of life and the importance of unity in the face of adversity. Through these crises, frontline caregivers have been the beacons of hope and compassion, tirelessly providing care and support to those in need. Their selflessness, dedication, and unwavering commitment have been a source of inspiration and comfort during times of darkness. Education has been paramount in our response to these crises, empowering individuals with knowledge and understanding to combat misinformation and promote prevention. Public health initiatives have played a crucial role in raising awareness and fostering community strength, laying the groundwork for a more informed and compassionate society. In times of crisis, the arts have served as a powerful medium for healing and expression. The AIDS Memorial Quilt stands as a powerful symbol of remembrance and solidarity, honoring the lives lost to AIDS and serving as a testament to the strength of the human spirit. The AIDS Memorial Quilt represents the world's largest folk art project with 55,000 panels and counting. Each panel, meticulously crafted and stitched, serves as a solemn reminder of the lives lost to AIDS, embodying the collective grief and resilience of our global community. Tonight, as we gather in this space, we will pay homage to those we have lost and celebrate the strength of survivors. We will be treated to performances from the AIDS Quilt Songbook, expertly rendered by VCSU vocalists and accompanied by Dr. Oswald Johnson. Additionally, we will have the privilege of hearing from esteemed speakers, each offering their unique insights into the intersection of art, health, and memory. As you explore the gallery during intermission or after the event, I urge you to pause and reflect on the profound significance of the AIDS Memorial Quilt. Let us honor the memory of those we have lost from this epidemic. Through music, art, and reflection, we will honor the legacy of the AIDS Memorial Quilt and reaffirm our commitment to raising awareness and combating HIV/AIDS in all forms. Thank you for joining us on this solemn yet hopeful occasion. Together, let us embrace the spirit of remembrance and tribute as we continue our journey towards healing and resilience.
Throughout the history of the human race, people have created art to symbolize and mark events that significantly impacted our lives and our understandings of our place in the greater world around us. Archaeologists have found cave paintings by Neanderthal dating around 60 to 40,000 years ago that depict solar events and comets, great hunting experiences, or meteor showers that most likely had a great deal of effect or brought about changes to the environment at those times. The events that made such a great impact for the Neanderthals and early modern humans left an artistic rendering of it that is still visible today, therefore carrying the communal memory of a remarkable moment in time. Through those cave paintings, we can share in the emotions and visualize the importance these events had on the lives of our prehistoric ancestors. As a way of being both a conduit of grief, our emotions, and our shared traumas, as well as a message or a snapshot of a moment or an event that changed our trajectory as a community or a nation, we are fortunate to have two panels from our country's National Archives of the AIDS Quilt. These two panels, out of the tens of thousands of panels that make up the entire quilt, we are lucky to have the two that have representation and meaning to people in our own community. These are only two panels out of the 55,000 that are out there. The AIDS epidemic, as Angela mentioned, began in 1981 and ravished not only our nation, but now the entire world. And it has killed millions of people, 400,000 of them between 1981 and 1999. So in less than 20 years, 500,000 people's lives were taken by the disease. The Quilt Project then became a way for victims' families to honor the lives of their loved ones who lost their lives to this terrible illness, but also as a way to process their grief and a shared experience. The quilt, having representation from over 111,000 individuals, imagine what 55,000 panels, all connected, would look like. How much space would that take? How many fields in North Dakota would be taken by the expansive size of 55,000 of those panels? In 1987, the quilt was fully assembled on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., but at that time there were only 2,000 panels. And even then it was a massive display of love and tragedy and persistence, resilience, and community. People create other memorials also as a way to commemorate moments in time and events that have happened that changed the world in an instant. On the Pine Ridge Oglala Reservation in South Dakota, the mass grave with the Lakota victims of a horrible massacre by the U.S. cavalry in the late 1800s is memorialized at the Wounded Knee Cemetery. There's a marble and concrete monument that is small compared to other massacre and battle site memorials. It is about 7 feet tall and about 1.5 to 2 feet wide on each of its sides. The names have now been worn down and only a few remain legible. But every day people visit the site and leave a ribbon or some tobacco or a trinket of some kind to continue the remembrance of the massacre and what its violent effects meant for the rest of the Oglala experience that still continues today at Pine Ridge. If you've been to Minneapolis in the past few years, you may have driven past the George Floyd Memorial at 38th and Chicago streets and seen how it has grown from a place where people leave flowers and notes expressing their feelings and frustrations. Then a mural was painted on the side of one of the buildings there, and now there's a sculpture of a solidarity fist. And people still leave flowers and notes or signs and drawings and photographs. Our nation still grieves George Floyd's murder and how it symbolizes greater national memory of racial injustices and conflicts. Through art like the quilt and these other monuments, we share a moment in time and a lasting message that the events that led to these moments in time have shaped who we are as a community and a nation and as a species. Some other events that have been memorialized through sculpture and art include the tragic national disaster in 2005 that wiped out entire areas of New Orleans when Hurricane Katrina slammed into the city. Artist Sally Heller erected a sculpture outside New Orleans Convention Center where thousands and thousands of displaced New Orleans residents took shelter in the weeks and months following the hurricane. She was inspired for this piece by what she saw from a rescue boat as she was being evacuated from her home on the lower 9th Ward during the hurricane. A house in a tree, a big portion of a house that had been blown all the way up into a tall tree. This year marks the 19th anniversary of Katrina, and it remains a major part of the city's identity, and it still carries the emotions, stories, grief, and strength of survival for the people of New Orleans, but also for our whole country. In Oklahoma City, the Murrah Federal Building Memorial is also still a major part of the city's identity. And the city still grieves the lives that were lost in the bombing in April of 1995. The site of the former federal building is now home to a museum, a reflection pond, and the field of empty chairs, where there are 168 sculptural figured chairs, one for each of the people whose lives were lost in the bombing, including 19 smaller chairs for the children who were killed. Then, artist Heath Satow created a magnificent sculpture in Rosemead, California, that includes one of the actual structural beams that was taken from the site of the World Trade Center in New York after the 2001 terrorist attacks. This beam is held up by hands made out of almost 3,000 steel-carved birds, each one representing a life that was taken in those attacks. This sculpture is in California, not in New York. It's a reminder of how we share an identity and grieve moments that so greatly affect all of us, no matter where we live or where we call home. September 11th, if you were alive then, was a profoundly transformative event, no matter where you lived, where you were from, or where you called home. And people from all over the country built memorials and sculptures and murals to commemorate that event, to remember it as a lasting piece of our shared identity as a nation, not just in New York City, but all over the country. People from everywhere can feel a connection to that day and that horrific loss of lives and the political aftermath that has ensued. A sculpture built in a public park, or another one at a hospital site, or a few more at schools, are a visual reminder of that shared connection, that shared grieving process, and the memory that we transcribe into materials and then make into works of art. Not all memorials are dedicated or representative of a shocking tragedy. Dr. Seuss Memorial Sculpture Garden in Massachusetts is a display of a shared memory that we have of a childhood icon and a literary hero for many Americans. This park and its sculptures allow us to be connected to our childhood innocence and playful nature while sharing that joy and nostalgia with others who have the same kind of reflection on what Dr. Seuss meant to our development and our youth. This sculpture garden honors the gifts and culture that Dr. Seuss gave us, and while it's in memory of him after his death, which is tragic, it doesn't have the same kind of somber grief or display of the strength that we share after surviving a traumatic event. It's a memorial to the whimsical playfulness that one man instilled in so many of us. Like sculptures, murals are a way that we put our emotions and memories into works of art to display a connection we have to an event, an important person, or a foundational milestone we've shared as a community or nation. Like the AIDS quilt, a mural can be a collective art project as well. In Knoxville, Tennessee, people have created a mural of birds in flight, in memory of people who lost their lives to COVID-19. It isn't just one artist who has painted all of the birds in this mural. Many individuals have participated in bringing this mural to life by adding their own bird in memorial of somebody in their life who was lost to COVID-19. This mural is even bigger now than when I took this photo a couple years ago with many, many more birds. Like making a quilt square in memory of a loved one who passed away from AIDS, people designed their bird and painted it onto this underpass as a representation in the same way as the quilt. It's a way of memorializing our grief, but also a healing process, and it's a way for a community to recognize and reflect on a pandemic that took away many people's lives, similar to AIDS. Similarly, the Making Space mural in Elgin, Illinois, which is a western suburb of Chicago, is a community display honoring key figures in Black history. The mural started off with just Frederick Douglass and the Solidarity Fist that was bound by chains, but others began to add more people, and now the mural has covered multiple buildings in Elgin. Individuals contribute their own additions to the collective work of art. It becomes a way that this community has come together to make a statement about something that is important and has impacted their lives. Like the prehistoric cave paintings by the Neanderthal and early modern humans, these murals tell a story of a time, an event, or of people who have made a great impact on our identity as a people and a community that share whatever message the mural is portraying. Perhaps one of the largest community murals ever has been the Berlin Wall that separated East and West Germany from 1961 to 1989. The Berlin Wall was 96 miles long and 13 feet high, plus an additional 10 to 12 feet of barbed wire. There were actually two walls, and they were set parallel next to each other, one on East German side, one on West German side, and there was a heavily guarded and landmine protected corridor between the two. The corridor was called the Death Strip, and Germans painted graffiti on both sides of the wall from the time it was first erected and to the time it was brought down in a mass display of unity and solidarity. Germans, as a shared moment of grief for their lost connections and the loss of their unified country, spray painted the wall on both sides as a protest for what the wall signified. Unlike the murals that depict a beautiful picture or portraits of a natural landscape, the Berlin Wall was a chaotic, messy, colorful, but at the same time static representation of the frustration, objection, and grief that Germans shared because of the separation by the wall and what was happening to their families and friendships that were physically separated by threats of violence. Murals, like sculptures, and like the quilt, can be for moments of both grief and mourning, but they are also a celebration of their life and honoring the important people and the events that have shaped our lives. Now I'm going to talk about a new kind of memorial that we have thanks to artificial intelligence and computer graphics. I was lucky enough during my graduate studies at University of Oklahoma to be part of a project with the Shoah Foundation, which is the foundation from Steven Spielberg started. And the project, we interviewed thousands and thousands of tourists at the Auschwitz Memorial in Poland and the Dachau Memorial in Germany. And we interviewed every Holocaust survivor that we could contact and find a translator to help us with, which was at the time about 70 to 80. And today, though, that number has dwindled down to about 40. So we did all these interviews, and we conducted the interviews asking the tourists at Auschwitz school groups that would come in to what question would you ask a Holocaust survivor if you could have a conversation face-to-face with them. And we recorded every question, no matter if it was, a somber, serious one, or if it was who was your first crush in middle school or something like that. And we recorded the survivors answering those questions. And then through the magic of computers and AI, some scientists and computer people at the University of South California built a database and entered in all of those questions and all of those answers. And then we recorded when the survivors, when we were recording them answering questions, there was like this dome of equipment, is all I can say, in technology that was recording them to be a hologram. And so now you can go to various Holocaust museums across the country. You can sit in the auditorium as you are now, and a hologram will appear on stage of a Holocaust survivor. And in person, it looks real. You can see their chest moving from breathing, a hair blowing from a breeze. You can see them shaking, that they might be a little nervous. You can see their movement when they giggle. It's pretty amazing to see a hologram of a person who now has passed away. But you as an audience member can ask a question, and then the computer pulls out those key words, and the Holocaust survivor's hologram answers that question to you in person. It's like you can have a conversation with a Holocaust survivor. And I was so lucky to be a part of that, and I still am. I still travel to Poland, and I'm still a part of the fellowship that we're doing this, and now we've concluded with the Holocaust survivors because we haven't been able to find any more to interview. But we are thinking of expanding the project to be for Native American elders or other members of a community that are going to be gone in the next few decades. What would it have been like if we had this technology during the AIDS epidemic, when combined with the quilt, we could have been having a conversation with one of the AIDS victims today, and to ask them our questions and to hear their answers, for their family members to come and just sit in the audience and talk to them and hear their voice again. So that's a new way of memorial that, thanks to technology, we can move into. And it's a great project that's similar to the quilt in that it's a shared experience of memory and carrying a story forward.
Oh So we have come a long way in the HIV epidemic since 1980s, and I can possibly have some positive news for everyone today, especially for those living with HIV. We have the best treatment available today, where people that are living with HIV can have near normal lifespan, especially if they are diagnosed early and if they are on treatment right away. So we are a low incidence state. Many Midwestern states are low incidence states. We still have an HIV epidemic in the United States, especially in the southeastern United States and metropolitan areas. In 2023, we had 32 individuals diagnosed with HIV in North Dakota. And we had 86 individuals either diagnosed or new to North Dakota who moved to North Dakota with HIV but were diagnosed in another state. HIV is mainly a disease among males, so 19 of our newly diagnosed cases are male, 13 are female, and 0 were transgender. HIV can happen to anyone at any time, at any age, so it is always important to get tested, but most of our newly diagnosed persons are between 30 to 34, in the age group 30 to 34, and then we do have some in 25 to 29 and 35 to 39 age group. We do see that our population living with HIV is aging, so we are kind of entering a new territory. It used to be that, in the 80s, if you had HIV, your lifespan was fairly short because the treatment was unavailable. In the 90s, the treatment was not adequate. And then in the 2000s, the treatment became very good, and now our population is aging and starting to deal with new issues like comorbidities that can complicate living with HIV. But that is something, like I said, new for us, and we are trying to expand our services and to consider those needs as well. The highest, I'm going to go to the next slide, the highest number of new infection is among the white population. However, this slide is a better representative. The highest rate of HIV is among the Black or African American population. In North Dakota, that is followed by American Indian or Alaska Native population, then by Hispanic, and then whites have the lowest rate, even though they have the highest number of cases. Looking at the risk factor, men having sex with men is the highest risk factor, followed by heterosexual sex, then injection drug use, and then MSM and IDU combined. For females, the highest risk category is heterosexual contact, then a heterosexual contact with a person with HIV, injection drug use, and then other, or not reported. The highest number of cases is in Cass County, and that's because that's the highest populated area in North Dakota. The second highest is in Ward County. Then we have Stutzman, Morton, and Burley. So who should get tested for HIV? These are CDC guidelines, and everyone between the ages of 13 and 64 should get tested for HIV at least once in their life. HIV is one of those infections that, just like any other viral infection like flu, you can have symptoms for a few days, and then it can go away for many years. So without testing, you might not know you have HIV. Not to scare anyone, but we just want everyone at least once to get tested and know their HIV status. All pregnant women should also be tested for HIV during their pregnancy. If a mom bears a child and she has not been treated, she has not received a treatment during her pregnancy and is not virally suppressed, there is 1 in 4 chance, or 25% chance, of her transmitting HIV to the baby. If she is appropriately treated and is virally suppressed, there is less than 1% chance of baby getting HIV. And that is a big initiative for us at the Public Health Department to make sure that all moms are screened for HIV and all moms are appropriately treated if they are positive for HIV, because HIV is still a lifelong disease. We don't have a cure for it yet. We hope to have a cure in the next 5-10 years, it's hard to say, but right now it still is something that's like a chronic disease and has to be treated continually. There are certain persons who are at increased risk and they should be tested annually. Those persons are men who are having sex with men, sex with someone who has HIV or who does not know their status, if somebody is sharing needles, syringes, or other drug injection equipment, or being diagnosed with another sexually transmitted infection. And actually having another sexually transmitted infection also increases your risk, besides being a sexual risk factor and like a social determinant of health, it also increases your risk because if you have, let's say, syphilis or gonorrhea or chlamydia, the tissue there is more sensitive and inflamed and it's easier to contract HIV. Those who are sexually active or bisexual, men especially, should get screened every 3 to 6 months just to know their status and prevent getting HIV. And I should say that as a part of this event, there is a free HIV testing available here on April 17th. So come and bring a friend and get tested for HIV. Free HIV testing is also available through the Department of Health and Human Services. For those that prefer to do it at home, there is a self-test kit that can be ordered online. There's a test to be completed, and based on the test results, the test kit is adjusted and is shipped out to the person. They can take the test, ship it back, and if some of those tests are positive, the test kit includes the STI test, hepatitis tests, syphilis tests, and a couple other tests that I'm not entirely sure, in addition to HIV and hepatitis C, and that can be put back in the mail. It will be shipped. If it is positive for one of those infections, a provider will contact you and refer you into care and treatment. There's also free HIV and hepatitis C testing available at various locations throughout North Dakota. Most of them are local public health, and some of these offices also offer free STI testing. So we've come a very long way as it pertains to HIV treatment. HIV is now a treatable chronic disease, and a lot of our clients who have had HIV for a long time, since the early 90s, can share their story and say how difficult life was when the medications were not as they are today, and all of the friends they've lost, and they still grieve and have not recovered, and think about all of what they say is all of the ghosts in their life that they're missing every day. So HIV can be treated in 2 ways. There is daily medications that can be taken, and then there are monthly or every other month injections that can be taken at the provider's office. Like I mentioned, persons with HIV who remain on treatment can have a near normal lifespan, and most of our clients, especially newly diagnosed clients, it still impacts their life, it changes their world. It is something that they still have to work through, but with the treatment and with the support that they receive through our program, they can kind of put the HIV on the back burner and focus and live their life fully. Persons who are virally suppressed cannot transmit HIV sexually, and that is known as undetectable equals untransmittable. And we try to inform everybody of this to destigmatize HIV, because if somebody is on medication, they're not infectious any longer. Antiretroviral therapy is recommended for everyone. It used to be recommended only at a certain point when the immune system deteriorated, but now it's recommended for everyone, and it is available through Ryan White program mainly, but it is also covered by other Medicaid, Medicare, and private insurance. So the Ryan White program is a federally funded program available through Health and Human Services. It is for those living with HIV. You have to have HIV, you have to live in North Dakota, and you have to have a certain household income in order to qualify. We have 12 agencies throughout North Dakota, and they are all, most of them are located at local public health, and then we have a clinic in Fargo and a community action that we partner with. There's also a program called HAPA, Housing Opportunities for Persons with HIV, and they are administered by Community Action in Bismarck, and they do housing assistance for low-income persons with HIV. So like I mentioned, most of our clients have a lot to deal with in addition to their HIV. Some of our clients are having mental health issues, substance issues, are involved with the justice system, are from another country, so they're dealing with the legal and immigration system. So our program, the biggest component of our program, in addition to covering medications and medical care, is case management. It's just something that having a case manager to help somebody work through their diagnosis and work through other issues to stabilize their life, like stabilize their housing, get access to medical transportation, receive access to psychosocial support services. That is really important to our clients and really important for us to be able to provide that service. For support services, we do fund some peer navigation services, which is a peer is somebody who is living with HIV or has had somebody in their life close to them that has passed away from HIV, so they are closely affected by HIV. They are there to provide support to our clients and to those that are newly diagnosed, to kind of walk them through the process of how do you tell your family, how do you tell your friends you've been diagnosed with HIV, how do you deal with external stigma, but also how do you deal with the internal stigma of getting HIV. That's one of our biggest obstacles sometimes, to deal with that internal stigma that the person has and believes that they are not important enough to receive treatment and services and the care that they need, and that they are important and their health is important. There is an in-person support group in Fargo, and then there are Zoom support groups that are available statewide. So if anybody is interested, you can just reach out to us. The contact info is on the last slide. We also have an HIV advisory board. It is a board that seeks representation from various people with HIV and those affected by HIV, the various stakeholders, medical providers. We want the input from everybody on how the services should be funded and what services should be available to those that are living in North Dakota. And this is my contact info. If you're ever interested in anything HIV or STI, you can find us at hhs.nd.gov/HIV. Thank you.
and after, and passed away. I have pictures to prove it. Before and after, and passed away. I have pictures to prove it.
Richmond has come down today to the hospital room. He rocks back and forth in the crisis. He says it's good we haven't lost our closeness, and cries as each one is taken. He has written many lines about these years, the disfigurement of young men, and the words of our tongues and closed minds. The body in pain will bear such nobility, but words have the edge of poison when spoken bitterly. Now he takes a dying man in his arms and tells him how deeply flows the river that takes the old man and his friends this evening. It is the river of dusk and lamentation. Flow, waltzes, dear river, I will carry this young man to your bank. I'll put him myself on one of your strong flat boats, and we'll sail together all the way through evening, all the way through
My sister, my friend, Nancy Alona Ketterling Nelson. We were a small family in Lemoore, North Dakota. It was just Nancy, myself, and Mom and Dad. And we got along pretty good as brother and sister. I was the little brother. Little did I know that role was going to change. I will eventually be the big brother. And so, I want to tell you a little story. Nancy, please forgive me if this is not quite right. But I used to tag along with Nancy. Loved to ride horses. And her cousin and her, and then, of course, I kind of tagged along. I had no interest in really riding horses. But we went, and I saw them riding out in the pastures west of town. And it was a hot summer day. And was really getting thirsty. Before we had bottled water and all those types of things. And Nancy was getting kind of thirsty too, so I looked around and thought, oh, there's a hose with water coming out by the house. We can go over there and get a drink of water. Well, I drank some of the water real quickly, and I spit it out. Nancy drank some and spit it out. We soon discovered that this was the water they were pumping out their basement with water. So it was kind of a funny little story that we always laughed and joked about. And you know, when she graduated in 1968, and she went to St. Luke's School of Nursing, and I honestly say, when she left with all her stuff and Mom and Dad were taking her there, I had tears in my eyes because my sister wasn't going to be there all the time. But I smiled because she had the bigger bedroom, and that means that I'm going to get that room. So there was a positive side. Elliot, they were married in 1971, and Elliot was a graduate of Concordia, and he was going to Oklahoma State University for veterinarian school. So they were there, and then after they finished that, they moved back to North Dakota a couple of places, and then eventually Elliot got a job with the USDA biological specialist, and they eventually moved to Ames, Iowa. 1976, I'm kind of doing this chronologically. 1976 was a big year. I was in Australia teaching, and I got a note or a letter from Mom saying that Nancy's going to have a baby. I thought, wow, this is my nephew or niece. I didn't know at that time which it was going to be. So I had decided to fly home anyway for Christmas. And so I thought, oh, it was due the end of December, the 1st of January. And I was just hoping I'd be there for the birth of the baby. I had to go back on January 8th. Jeff was born on January 6th. So I got to see his birth right after he was born. Next date I flashed to is 1987. I was spending Christmas in Lemoore with Mom and Dad, and Nancy and family wasn't able to come home that year, and so we always called at Christmas time. And so we called, and Nancy said Elliot was sick. We had a cold or flu, and we talked to Jeff because he's always excited about Christmas. And I talked to Nancy, and I just had this feeling something was off. Something wasn't quite right. And I didn't think any more about it, and then Mom and Dad called me in January, about January 11th or 12th, and says, Gary, we've got to go down to Ames. Nancy says, Elliot's very sick. He doesn't know how long he'll be alive. So they drove down, and I drove down, and we were told that he died of fungal meningitis. And I only got, when I went in the room to see them, they let me in. They were kind of restricting time. And I noticed his eyes were covered up. And we just said a little greeting. I had about a minute, and then I was asked to leave. And so he passed away, and it was a shock. I just couldn't believe what's going on here. And then I decided that I wanted to work on a subdoctorate in science education. And I asked at NDSU, where's the best school? Well, it just happened to be the University of Iowa, which is in Iowa City, not Ames. But I thought, well, gee, that would be kind of nice. I'll be closer to Nancy. And I went down there Memorial Day, and or the few days before, I went to meet with my advisor. I had gotten an assistantship at the university, and Nancy and I were talking, and she said, is this really what you want to do, Gary? And I said, yeah, I think it is. You know, I want to make this move and get going on my PhD. Then Nancy said, I have something to tell you. I thought, what? Elliot had fungal meningitis, but it was due to AIDS. And then the next setback was that she had tested positive for HIV. And I was just shocked and didn't know quite what to do. And I made the decision, but she hadn't told Mom and Dad. She said, should I tell Mom and Dad? And I said, I really think you should. You need to share it with somebody else. And she did share it with Elliot's one sister. And then she went home in July, and she told Mom and Dad. And she wanted to tell them because she was going to be going on AZT. She went home, and that went well, although Nancy says, please, please do not tell anybody. The big thing was to protect Jeff. You have to remember at that time, people with HIV or AIDS were poorly treated. Look at Ryan White, who was isolated from the schools and ridiculed. And people lost their houses. They burned their houses down. And we wanted to really protect Jeff, and of course Nancy too. But her main concern was Jeff. Jeff, we've got to watch for him. So what it did for our family, we suddenly had to start learning about AIDS and the whole routine, the HIV and what it does. And every time Nancy would go to the doctor, what is your T cell count? And it was dropping. T cells helps the immunity. And we became concerned. July of, she was going to start AZT. And of course, if you know anything about AZT and the music that was sung here is that it's expensive, it's toxic, and at that time they were just experimenting. They were grabbing for straws. They did not know how they were going to treat this. And they had not done a lot of research. The government wouldn't fund the research for it, and eventually it was funded a bit and approved, but they did not know how AZT would affect, large dosages would affect the female, the woman. So Nancy was kind of a guinea pig from that standpoint. And at September of 1988, I was over visiting because I was closer now, so I could spend more time with her. I always struggled. Do I spend the time with Nancy or do I spend the time with Jeff? We tried to do things together, but there were some things I needed to talk to Nancy about. And usually when she went to bed, then I'd go up and we would watch TV or whatever Jeff wanted to do. In September of 1988, I was over there visiting, and she became very sick and with a fever. He says, Gary, I think I need to go to the emergency room. So I said, okay, let's go. And we went there, and she had a mild case of hepatitis. And they gave her a blood transfusion. And I just will always remember that look into her eyes. She was terrified. I was too. But I knew that we were going to have a long journey to continue. October 1988, still skull scan, bone marrow, blood test, blood cultures every 6 weeks. And in 1988, this would be Nancy's last Christmas in North Dakota. There were a lot of things going on. In 1989, I was able to get her to the University Hospital in Iowa City. They were doing a lot of research on AIDS. Dr. Stapleton, a wonderful physician, and she went there and basically kind of looked over and said, stay on the AZT and come back in a year. We have to watch and see what happens. So she was not, at that point, she was still HIV positive. She was not she did not have AIDS until you get a major infection. She had a great doctor. She was a diabetic educator, and she had worked in oncology. She had a great doctor, and he helped protect her by her files were kept separate from all the other files. And so it was a blessing, so we could kind of keep this still quiet. 1989, the spring, Nancy loved to go outside and garden, and the doctor says, you must wear a mask and have gloves on. And so we dealt with that. Meanwhile, I'm trying to do my dissertation research, finish up my classwork, and go over and spend time with Jeff and Nancy. And it was really getting me kind of down. I didn't know quite where to focus, and so I went into counseling. And it was through that somebody there got me into a counseling, or a group, a support group for friends and family with people with AIDS. And that is where I met some very people. I wasn't the only one going through this, and that's what I needed to know. And once again, Nancy was not real outgoing to go to counseling. She wanted to protect Jeff. We got to protect Jeff. And so the AZT, she tried at different times, but she got sicker and sicker. And finally she said, you know, I just can't do this anymore. So we went off that. Besides AZT, this was 1988 or 89. It was $8,000 a year. I mean, to nowadays it would cost, but at that time, that was a fortune. She decided to go off the AZT. She was able to give her AZT to a young man that did not have any money. And so what she had left over, the doctor allowed her to give it to them. And people are always asking us, rare blood disorder, we'd have to answer. We couldn't say the word AIDS. In fact, the President of the United States at that time couldn't even say the word AIDS. But we would say rare blood disease, we'd say leukemia, cancer, terminal illness. And then in January of 1990, bam, we had the major infection. Pneumocystis pneumonia put her in the next category of AIDS. They decided to try a new medication called DDI. And so she was on that. And for some reason, Nancy began to share a little bit with friends. And finally, this was 1990, she told Jeff what was going on with her, with the AIDS. So the big thing was the right to privacy at that time. She would attend Jeff's activities, track meets, basketball, band concerts, scouting things, until it just became too hard for her. Mom and Dad came down quite often and stayed there for a longer period of time, and when I wasn't there, Dad would go to some of those events for Jeff. They even had a good friend who actually would videotape the basketball games and give them to Nancy so she could watch them. It was also then the Tallmans, I gotta mention their name, the Tallmans that when Nancy in the last couple of months, they sent a bouquet of roses every week. And it was very touching to know that somebody cared. The new experiment drug, DDC, they were going to try, DDI didn't work, DDC, and Nancy said, no, I've had enough of this. I just can't go through this anymore. And the big question was, what about Jeff? What do we do? Mom and Dad offered to take him. I was going to take him if that's possible. And they had good friends, Rick and Andrea Hill, who said, well, you know, they didn't have any children, but they said, he can come and stay with us. I moved to Fort Worth because I got a job at Texas Christian University. And it was, I didn't want to put him into a big Fort Worth school district, and he wanted to stay in his little school and carry through. So Ricky and I said, well, he can finish through high school, and then we'll make some decisions down the road. In 1990 also, she developed MAI. It's a type of tuberculosis, lung disease, and affects other organs too. She had red spots on her skin, so she always wore long sleeves to cover. They weren't open lesions, they were just red spots on her skin. And she kept working as a diabetic educator, and the way she worked was she was on call 24 hours for 3 days a week. She became thinner and thinner, and every day she had fever, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, aches and pains, low hemoglobin. She began to get retinitis, going blind, sweats, hepatitis, meningitis, and in August of 1990, Nancy and I drove home to Lemoore. That was her last time in North Dakota. Doctor told her shortly after that she's going to have to go on IVs every day. And she cried, but there's nothing we could do. What could we possibly do? So she got a catheter in her chest. So all the IV fluids, the chemotherapy, antibiotics, drawing blood transfusions were all done through that port. And in 1991, retinitis was getting worse. June 27th, she resigned. And that was a hard thing for her, but she just couldn't do it anymore. And June 29th, she was very sick. And the doctor says, you need to have hospice. Wonderful, wonderful people, hospice. And she said, I'm not afraid to die, but I'm worried about Jeff, her son. And that was the big thing. In September of 1991, her hemoglobin was dropping. She had 5 transfusions, not producing bone marrow. Her liver was not functioning. The white blood cells were not being produced. Platelets were crashing. September 30th, I got a call down at Texas Christian University saying, Gary, and I had flown back and forth several times before that. They said, Gary, you need to come home. Nancy's really, really sick. I flew into Des Moines. Rick picked me up and got me to the hospital. And I walked into the hospital, into her room, and I was just shocked. I could not believe how thin she was. She couldn't even talk. I went over to the side of the bed, and she tried to sit up as though she acknowledged me, and that meant so much. And Mom and Dad went downstairs for lunch. And so I sat with her, holding her hand, stroking her arm. And I finally said to her, I said, Nancy, it's okay to go. It's okay. You fought the fight. And Mom and Dad came back up. And I said, I just have to take a break. And I went down to the lounge. And I looked out, and it was a beautiful October day with the fall leaves and bright blue sky. And the nurse came down and said, Gary, you need to come down to the room now. And by the time I got there, she had passed away. And it was a very, very difficult time. In Iowa City, or at the funeral, I'm back up here, at the funeral that we had for her, I was so pleased. 3 of my professors from the University of Iowa came to the funeral. Graduate students came to the funeral. other friends that I had met in Iowa City came to the funeral, and it meant so much to have that support. We had decided that before Nancy died, we talked it over. Rick and Andrea were going to take care of Jeff for those years in school. And by the way, Rick and Andrea eventually adopted Jeff. They did not have any children, as I mentioned, but the day Nancy, we had the funeral, that day, their baby from Korea was coming in. So that evening we spent at the Des Moines airport, and Rick and Andrea received their Korean baby, Daniel. And the thing is, the story doesn't stop there. Afterwards, when I went back down to TCU, trying to finish the dissertation, I was all but dissertation, and I did get it finished. But I felt I still had to be connected. And so I volunteered at the AIDS outreach group. What I volunteered was in the food pantry. I could help the patient or the people that had AIDS come in and get their groceries, and I would carry their groceries out to their car. It was a simple thing to do, but it made me feel that I was doing something still. And then one day, a young man came up to me and he said, you know, Gary, would you be willing to sit with my partner this evening? I just need to get out for dinner with a few friends. I said, sure. And I went and Jacob wanted to do his laundry, so I helped him with his laundry, and we sat for 3 hours just talking about music. And a favorite of mine and his partner told me that I was the last person that talked with him other than him, and that he died the next week. So I was seeing a lot of death, but I found that I saw patterns of the quilt at TCU. And I thought, this might be something Mom would like to do. And right away she grabbed onto it. And so she started making the quilt that you will see in the exhibit area. Then something really surprising. Mom was a very quiet person. She started going out and talking to groups. She talked to churches, she talked to young people. I thought, whoa, this is wonderful. And that was her way of healing, too. And so a lot went on during that time, and I will tell you now that Mom passed away 5 years afterwards of a blood clot. And Dad passed away in 2013. Jeff still lives in Ames. He works at the USDA, similar to where his dad was at. And he has 2 beautiful girls. And one of them entered as a freshman in college and wants to go into medicine. And the other one is a sophomore in college. But the support and stuff is really important. And I will leave with what I have put on the quilt. To my sister, my friend, memories fill my mind, tears fill my heart, your spirit and words guide my direction. In loving memory of Nancy Alona Nelson Ketterling, a sister, a daughter, a mother and wife, whose courage and love touched each one of us. Your loving brother, Gary.
Yeah.